guys, Pat here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And today I'm working on a 2002 Volvo VHD dump truck. I just recently acquired it and just going through and fixing up a few odds and ends on it. Being just 20 years old, it's bound to have a few little issues, but overall it's in really good shape. At any rate, I'll show you what I'm up to. This was actually missing, and I think Heidi might be able to get a photo of this as it was when I found it. But this is a hood release, and of course this goes on the other side. So you can see on this side I've taken some measurements. I removed this one obviously and found the centers of all the holes and drew a grid. I have this part intact on the other side, so that's a good thing. I was also able to, if you can see this little protrusion on the side, I found center of that, and that happened to be the center of the large hole. And then I could take measurements off of center of the large hole. I could lay out the grid for the screw holes or the bolt holes that fasten the hood catch to the hood latch. So all I have to do is just build something in here by way of fiberglassing. I'm thinking I might go ahead and use some JB Weld and go ahead and adhere a network of metal pieces back here so that I can tap these holes again. These just have basically have nuts on the backside, some sort of a lock nut on the backside of this. And so I'm going to try to duplicate something or fabricate something that will fill up that hole over there. So I'm kind of brainstorming a little bit, and I came up with a conglomeration of metal pieces, and I'm just working out of what I have in the shop. So I had this aluminum angle iron, which is a 1/4 inch thick, pretty nice stuff, and that fits right in to the side here. This 2-inch piece of angle iron that goes up this way fits right in where that kind of dives off a little bit, and so that 2-inch piece comes right into where that ridge is, or where that transition is from one elevation to another. Now some of you could probably already tell that somebody's been in here doing a little bit of patchwork, but Bondo is not going to do the trick. It's going to have to be something that has some holding power. So I'm going to rough this up, clean it up, apply JB Weld in here, and put it in place. I'll drill and tap this while it's actually mounted and dried in here. And I got this all cleaned up. I could take my measurements from that other piece over there. I actually have the grid lines check marked and measured out. The pieces that I could actually measure, you can see the black Sharpie lines or tick marks. The lines that I have marked out is the vertical lines that go this way through this catch, and so when it comes in here I have the holes, the vertical holes all lined out, and I have the horizontal marks back here, but I don't have a straight edge to kind of wrap it around here. Once I get this in place, then I can make all these measurements and transfer it over. So the nice thing here is I have adjustments horizontally and vertically here. Hopefully I'll get that as close as I possibly can, and maybe even good enough, but if it is off, I can adjust this up and down, front and back, and sideways. Elongated bolts here, elongated bolts here for up and down, and we have adjustments this way through these bolts on the inside. Like I say, I'm going to load this thing up with JB Weld. It's an adhesive, and it's going to actually make contact with this piece here and this piece in here, this right here. So it's going to bridge all of this outlying area right here. This piece of, obviously I've talked about it, but it's actually going to adhere to the inside of here. So there's going to be contact all the way around the perimeter of this brake. Once they get all this together, hopefully I'll be able to sandwich all this stuff, cleco it, take and rivet everything into place. The rivets will have a little bit of structural integrity, but the big thing that's going to hold this when it dries is the JB weld. So that's the plan. I hope it works. I found the angle. It was important for me to get as straight as I possibly could on here, because with this angle, I mean, if you're off any way one or the other, which I'm sure I'm not perfect, but I tried to be as accurate as I possibly could, and then transferred that information over to this piece, top and bottom, and I verified both angles. Both of these angles here are the same, coming off of this reference. This little fin here, or this tab, is going to make contact with this in here. Or when I go to install this, I'll rivet this in place, rivet this in place on the bottom, because this is going to bend up and this is going to bend over this way. So all of that thinking and engineering per se leads me to this right here. Now I got to beat the tar out of this booger, and hopefully it'll come into compliance. Now it's time to do the other side. Now when I'm bending this, I bring the line out forward just a little bit, because I'm trying to shoot for that to be the center of the radius. Okay, let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I have to work on this piece in here. Okay guys, last night I, off camera, tried to get it in here. There just wasn't enough room inside this pocket to get this turned back up to where it would fit into place. So I had to end up just cutting it in two, just cut it down the center. And as a result, I can stick those in there, and I have the shape pretty close to where it's supposed to be. That's going to go in there about like so. That's how far apart these two need to be. The front edge of the angle iron is going to come up just short of that line. And then I'm also going to fasten the angle iron to this once I get this in place. But in order to hold these two in place, I have a little piece of aluminum flat stock. And I just have 4 screws that I'll use. I'm gonna drill this top piece, and I'm gonna tap the bottom piece, so that way I can draw this up tight, and then this will actually fit nice and square or flat, or it'll have a flat plane across here, but this will also hold everything in place. I'll drill a pilot hole clear through both pieces of aluminum, and that will ensure square. So obviously I want to get a drill bit that is actually significantly smaller than the shank on the screw. That one will work fine. I already have the hole location measured out, and I just have these in here for spacers. Now again, I'm going to pre-fit everything to make sure everything fits before I go to start mixing up glue. Just in case you guys were wondering what the Allen wrenches were for, is that's just to hold the holes I pre-drilled in here steady so it wouldn't move, because we don't want any of these holes to be off. Now I'm going to take a drill that's just a little bit larger than the shank on this bolt, separate the pieces, and I'm going to number. That way I don't flip this over or turn it this way and get them mixed up, because these holes will never be perfectly the same all the way across the board. two pieces will have to have smaller holes so we can tap those. Okay, this is 1032. I find out by just taking a die and running the screw or bolt into the die to find out which tap that I need. So I need a 1032. If I can see the threads behind the drill bit, and it looks like it's pretty close to the same size as the shank, I'm going to go with that. You know, even though you're tapping aluminum, you still should use a lubricant. But I'm trying to stay away from grease and such, because although I'm going to rough these up and degrease them, I still want to avoid grease if I possibly can. If I was using steel and a steel plate that I plan on putting back behind here, I will use cutting oil on that. It's also a good idea to use cutting oil on aluminum because aluminum can strip out easy. Okay, that cut nicely. Now I got three more to go. Now you don't have to run those clear to the end, just to where it starts to run smoothly through. Now I suppose Volvo is no different than any of the other trucks out there as far as buying things. I priced out a grill the other day and they were wanting to charge $1,000 and something for the grill, and that was before taxes and shipping. So anytime I can do something like this, even though it may take me a couple of days out of scraps in the shop, then I'm a lot better off financially. That and the challenge is kind of fun. Trying to figure out how to fix something or how to repair. We'll line up the A's with the A. And yes, I have slotted screws around here. These I bought at a garage sale. I got 2 trays of them for a pretty good deal. That's pretty rigid. I'm pretty happy with that. And so then what's going to happen is this piece here is going to go in after the fact. And I left a little bit of room here so I can fit this to the hole a little better. So it's probably going to end up like that with maybe an 1/8 of an inch gap. I could be wrong. I might butt up right next against it. If that's the case, I'll have to round this off. Matter of fact, I might round that off anyway, just in case I have to. Okay, so that comes up nice and flush, and it doesn't ride up on the radius inside here. So that gave me another 1/8 of an inch of flexibility in towards this connection bar. I did come out and pre-fit this, and there's a couple of things that I did. Is I put a radius on this so it can go on the inside of this fiberglass, and then I also rounded off the edges on this inside piece that goes in towards the inside of that angle iron. So that gave me about an 1/8 of an inch more throw inside, so the angle iron will fit flat and not ride up if it has to come in a little bit. It gives me a little bit of flexibility in or out. So we're going to go ahead and try this again. Now what I also want to do is do the same thing with this piece. Up in the corners, I'll put fasteners, and that way this whole place right in here is where this guy is going to fit in here. Okay, that makes that one solid piece. And that's how you get all these little pieces in that hole and then expand it back out again. Okay, that's a pretty good fit. So imagine, if you will, all that outer layer on the inside between the metal and the aluminum filled with JB Weld, and this either filled in with fiberglass resin and fiberglass matting or body filler and then drilled and tapped out. Again, it's engineering on the fly, and I think I'm pretty pleased with it so far. I'm going to go ahead and lay the grid out best I can with the information that I acquired from the other side. And I'm going to go ahead and put in 4 tapped holes to accommodate the new boot. I should probably find out exactly what these things are called. Anyway, I think you got the idea. And then I found the center for this bit here. When I go to drill these out for the correct size for these bolts, then I'll get started on this and drill this out for a pilot hole for this. And the reason I wanted to do a pilot hole is because once you get this going, it's really hard to see inside here, so I want to get a pilot hole so this thing will seek out the center and drill the hole in the perfect center. So I found perfect center by just going between these pilot holes here. So this is going to be a 1/4 inch. So what we decided to do, obviously this is the front, of course, the part that you're going to see. So we're going to make it to accommodate the plate here for the catch. And so on the back side, what I'll be able to do before I put this in, I am going to pre-mount these or pre-glue them. That way, when I go to recess each one of these pieces in here, these will already be secured on the back side of this reinforcement here. I've taken measurements so these fit nicely with room to spare and not interfering with the circumference of this circle. I've taken a couple of pieces of metal, and that'll fit right in there just like so. And that gives me a little bit of slack either way so they can self-center. Went over to the drill press, drilled a couple 1/4 inch holes, and unfortunately with this metal, I don't feel good about not using cutting compound or cutting oil. So we'll have a little bit of oil residue to clean up. No big deal. And why not just use nuts, a guy might ask. This has less surface area than this whole plate does. And so what the idea is to take and fasten this with glue of some kind, like JB Weld, and have that glue dry and set, and then it will be a permanent part of those individual plates. Now this nut, if I wanted to use this nut on here on the back side, just a little bit of effort and that would start to spin. Even if it was glued on there, there's not a whole lot of surface area holding, so there's a lot less strength than there is with this wider piece right here. It'll actually work better than just a nut on the back, because there's no way to hold that nut on the back when you go to put this together. So this actually has to be permanently installed. So in order to save myself an awful lot of headache and stress, I went ahead and cut these holes out bigger. That will accommodate the bolts. This will draw tight the that nut plate on the back side. So I took a grinder and cleaned up the adhesion side of these nut plates, took all the oxidation off of the aluminum, and roughed this up, cleaned it up, and wiped it down with acetone and dried it. Now I'm going to mix up some JB Weld, and it doesn't have to be exact, as close as you can. There's no real way to measure it. You just gotta eyeball it. Now what I'll do is I'll just apply it to the back side of these plates instead of applying it to this side, because I know exactly how much area is here. I'm going to center those the best I can over top of the holes. I put grease on those bolts and run them through, and have this guy going from the opposite side installed as it should be. Then I won't have to worry about it not being square. Now I didn't screw these down just as hard as I could. I didn't want to squish all the glue out of there, but I squished out enough to where they are making contact, and a good layer of glue, their adhesive, is fastening this together. You can see the benefits of putting this on ahead of time. Now I don't have to worry about lining everything up when I go to install it on the truck. So we'll let this dry. We'll let it sit overnight. Well, here's the complete piece. All this metal back in here is going to be hidden by fiberglass or body filler or something, some kind of media to smooth it out. And then, but this right here is actually going to be behind the existing fiberglass. This fin right here, this fin right here, this little tab here, and then obviously this piece here. So yesterday before we quit, I went ahead and sanded with a little bit more of a coarse sandpaper, 100 grit, and sanded inside, outside. I wiped it down with acetone and dried it off, and now that is dry and prepped and ready to accept the parts. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to disassemble this whole apparatus. I have to mix up some JB Weld. I'm going to use some aluminum blind rivets. These are 1/8 inch by 5/16 grip, so that'll penetrate both the aluminum and also the fiberglass. And I have a drill with an 1/8 inch drill bit and an extra battery. Once I get started on this, I'm not going to do any talking. it'll be focusing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disassemble metal pieces. I'm going to mix up that JB Weld and get it prepared to apply to the pieces, and then I'm going to quickly assemble all those pieces inside here, and I'm going to be pulling this tight, and I'm going to be drilling those 1/8 inch holes, and one at a time putting a rivet in each hole after I drill it. And I may or may not fasten those down one at a time. I might get a couple in place to kind of act like a cleco a little bit. The clecos, what they do is they actually kind of help pull things, hold things together, pull things tight. What I did forget to mention, I need to sand down the parts behind this angle aluminum and all the parts of the plates, so I have a nice clean rough adhesion for the adhesive. Now we're working with some body filler just to smooth things out a little bit. It's not critical. It's just a cosmetic thing. Vanity, if you will. This particular brand is Bondo. This is actually a little bit old. Actually, I mixed this a little bit hot. And what I mean by that is I put quite a bit of hardener in there. I didn't really need that much. So it's going to set up faster. Now, in order to make it look decent, in my opinion, you have to put several coats on here. Quite truthfully, the more you put on, the more you got to sand off. So if you do several thin coats, you have less to sand off that way. Now we'll let that set for a few minutes. Let it cure, let it kind of harden a little bit, and once it's still soft, you can take a razor blade or chisel or something like that and kind of cut off the high points, or you can just let it dry and you can sand it down. Here's the final product on the bodywork. Typically when you're doing bodywork, this rivet may show just because you can see it's exposed. And one of the tricks to doing body filler, and you need to feather it out, because if you don't feather it out, you're going to have rough spots. And the other thing that I've learned over doing this several times is that you can see with your fingers better than you can your eyes. So what I mean by that is you can run your finger over this, even close your eyes and feel, and there's a little bit of a rough spot here, a little bit of a dimple right there, there's a little spot right in here, but you know what? I'm not really overly concerned about this, but you can keep going over top of this with body filler in different areas. I have at least 4 coats of body filler on this project right now. So a couple of techniques that I used for applying the body filler on this is a sanding block. This is just a block of wood. This is self-adhesive 100 grit sandpaper, and then just a regular, this is that same self-adhesive sandpaper, but yet I just ripped off a piece of it and folded it on itself and made this kind of a stiff little card basically. So I can fold it into a round piece like that and get in the corners. Actually, there's a little spot right there. I'll just go ahead and clean that up. Whenever you have a flat surface like this, it's good to use a sanding block, because if you don't use a flat block or a flat surface to work off of, when you paint this, you're going to see little dips and wows and valleys in your work. So it's a good idea when you put body filler on something like this, you try to take a flat block like this and work that body filler off of there. So what I'm going to do is I have this basically cleaned off, and I'm going to go ahead and mask things off here and get ready to prep to paint. Yeah, I had the hair dryer on here just to kind of warm this up a little bit. It's February and a nice cool day, but not freezing cold. So I wanted to warm that up just a little bit, and it's warm to the touch, not hot, but that'll help my primer to stick better. You can see a few little defects in here. I'm going to go ahead and wet sand this. I'm just going to leave it primered, and one of these days, if we ever have to paint the truck, then we'll go ahead and put some sort of a finish on it at that point. But I don't think it's necessary under the hood like this. So in order to align this, I found this little removable detachable panel here on the wheel well. 2 T27 Torx drives to hold that on there. So you have some adjustments this way you can make by loosening these 4 bolts here. And I've done that, and I'm starting to just going ahead and tightening these up. The catch has to come towards the outside just a little bit, and I just turned the camera on after I had made the adjustment. Needs to come more, maybe a 1/4 of an inch further than what I've done. I just take a pry bar, come out roughly about that much maybe. And I'm not going to tighten that down quite yet. I'm just going to set that down easy and align it, see if it lines up well before I tighten it down. Thinking on this just a few seconds, I think the idea would be is to take that window out from the wheel well, loosen all of those bolts, and then secure the hood, and then tighten the bolts up with the hood down and secured and latched in place. I think that's probably worked pretty good. So, but everything lines up, looks like lines up pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. Okay, that's latched into place. However, we got this tape on here because Ryan has been buffing this out for us. At any rate, the transition between the front and the back side of the fender is off a little bit, so maybe I gotta drop that down. So I'm gonna loosen the bolts for the height adjustment on that catch. And while I'm at it, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten these 4 up, because that is self-aligned. 13mm on top, 12 on the bottom. Now I will admit, having this panel out of here makes it easier for what I'm doing now. I'll give it a little bit of a percussion adjustment. Transition between this piece and this piece looks really good. It's latched in place. I'm gonna go see if I can release the hood, and I'm gonna latch it a couple times and see if the integrity of my work is satisfactory. Everything looks like it's holding good. No cracks. I'll double check my tightness on my bolts here, but I think alignment looks really good. Okay, I would say that that's a successful repair. Glad it worked out. Glad you could join me. Hope this helped some of the techniques that I used here help you guys out, and a repair job you might have to do with a fiberglass piece and have to fabricate something to make that strong enough to hold. So anyway, thanks for stopping by. Take care, and God bless.